Of 5 ships, only 1 remained. Of over 500 crewmen, only 23 survived.
Jeez. How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We're going to be checking out a video about the Dutch East India Trading Company. So I have a priority request from Munch. Shout out to you. And we have right here, the title says the real story behind Shogun TV show, which I don't know what that is. I never heard of it. I don't watch it, but I don't think it's not about the show, right? I guess the show, I'm assuming, shows some historical events, right? Because it's about William Adams, the English samurai. In the message that Munch sent me, it says, I would like to make a priority request of an accurate historical video about the time and events of the popular series Shogun. So whatever time and events that series portrays, this is the real life of what it is, right? It says in the video, they talk about a Dutch organization, which is the Dutch East India Trading Company. We're going to find out who is William Adams, English samurai, by the channel Kings and Generals, guys. Make sure you go check that out. The links to this original video will be in that description section down below, as always.
Japan at the turn of the 17th century was a mysterious land. The enigmatic lords of this empire allowed very few foreigners into their domain, only out of necessity, and even then with begrudging disdain. This makes it all the more remarkable to look upon the stories of great individuals from foreign lands who defied the odds, became favoured friends to the great daimyos of Japan, and shaped the history of the land of the rising sun. In our last video we talked about Yasuke, a man from Africa who became a trusted warrior for Oda Nobunaga. In this video we will tell the tale of William Adams and explain how an intrepid English navigator gained the rank of samurai and became an invaluable asset to Japan's greatest shogun, Tokugawa Ieyasu. A big thank you to the sponsor of this video.
So that dude legitimately became a samurai. Like, it's not just like a nickname. He became a samurai. So sponsor bit, go check out Magellan TV. We're going to skip past it though. We're going to get right into the video.
William Adams was born in the town of Gillingham in the county of Kent in England into a family of wealthy means and lived his early childhood in relative comfort. This changed at the age of 12 when his father died. In order for his family to make ends meet, young William was apprenticed to the shipyard master Nicholas Diggins to learn the seafaring trade. Adams spent the next decades under the strict tutelage of his master, learning to build ships, navigate open oceans, and read the stars. At times, Adams proved to be a rebellious pupil, but a shrewd and fast-learning one. In 1588, a Catholic armada of Spain had come to the shores of England with the intent to subdue the Protestant Britons and depose their queen, Elizabeth I. By this
Were they in war? Or something? Why were they on their way to invade?
time, Adams was 24 years old and as strong a pilot as anyone. He served in the fleet of the daring Sir Francis Drake, captaining a supply ship amidst the smoke and chaos of battle, defending his island home. By the time Adams reached his 30s, he was a master of the seas and sought to make his fortune. Allured by the prospect of riches in the Orient, Williams travelled to the Netherlands along with his brother Thomas and signed on with a Dutch corporate merchant fleet. The Dutch and the English were allies. Both wished to dismantle the maritime empires of Portugal and Spain so they could take their place as masters of the oceans.
Okay.
The company's mission was to use a stolen Portuguese sea chart and sail through the Pass of Magellan to the southwest coast of South America, plundering any Spanish and Portuguese possessions on the way.
Magellan. Yeah. That sponsor ad was for Magellan TV. I said Magellan TV. I just realized that. So anyways, this was in 1588. So this is right before the Dutch Golden Age. So is this maybe right after they started the Dutch East India Trading Company? I'm not sure when they started it. I just know that in the 1600s is when is what they consider the Dutch Golden Age with that.
They would trade with the locals for silver, returning back with spices from the east. So in June of 1598, Adams' fleet of 5 merchant warships set out from the Netherlands. The fleet first made its way southward, down the west coast of Africa. There, a fierce storm separated 2 of the ships from the main fleet, not to be seen again. The rest...
they didn't have GPS back then. They're literally looking at stars and like star charts and stuff, which I don't know how. I mean, they had some skill. I mean, they definitely had some skill that we don't have today. I mean, some people do, but it's not as common as it was back then.
Managed to continue across the Atlantic and made it through Magellan's Pass. By the time they reached the Ecuadorian coast, a 3rd vessel had been blown off course and lost.
Jeez.
Only 2 vessels remained now, Hooper and Liefde, which Adams piloted. Trade in the New World went poorly. The crew did not endear themselves to the locals and were attacked. 20 sailors were killed, including William's brother, Thomas.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the natives, though, they're wondering what's going on. This is their land, and then you got all these giant ships coming in. You got all these white people with like shields and swords and metal helmets and stuff. They never seen this stuff before, probably. They're like, what in the world? Like, we're getting attacked. Of course they're not going to welcome them like...
The survivors fled back to their ships. The loss of his brother was hard on Adams, but the stoic pilot was not one to give up on his mission. Realizing that their hope for survival in the New World was slim, the Englishman convinced his remaining Dutch compatriots to go west to Japan. And so they began the Great Crossing. The journey...
Why'd they go to Japan? I missed that. We gotta go back.
Not one to give up on his mission. Realizing that their hope for survival in the New World was slim, the Englishman convinced his remaining Dutch compatriots to go west to Japan.
Why?
And so they began the Great Crossing. The journey across the Pacific Ocean was long and treacherous.
Oh yeah, that's a giant... That's a big chunk of water. I mean, hell, they already went from Netherlands all the way down across the Atlantic Ocean to the bottom of South America and around to the western side. That's already a journey. Now they're getting ready to go across the Pacific Ocean all the way to Japan, which it doesn't say why Japan, but probably because they're like, well, I guess we'll just keep on going. We'll go to the next place, since this place was clearly not a good idea.
At some point, Adams' journal states that their ships made landfall on a chain of tropical islands, which...
Polynesian Islands, perhaps? Hawaii? Or like, what else is out there? Easter Island, maybe? Is that out there? I don't know.
Which was most likely Hawaii. According to him, 8 sailors deserted on these islands, but were captured and eaten by the natives. The rest of them sailed on. In February, a typhoon sunk the Hooper, damning all aboard to a watery grave.
Jeez.
The crewmen of the Liefde were exhausted and afflicted with scurvy. One poor soul was so deranged that during a storm, he attempted to fire the ship's powder magazine to put them all out of their misery. This attempt was foiled by Adams, who berated his crew for their cowardice. After
Jeez, he's just gonna blow up the whole ship. Wow, okay. This is getting interesting.
a 2-year voyage, the Liefde made landfall in eastern Kyushu.
Hold on, did that just say after a 2-year voyage?
This attempt was foiled by Adams, who berated his crew for their cowardice. After a 2-year voyage, the Liefde made landfall in eastern Kyushu in southern Japan in April of 1600.
Could you imagine being on a ship for 2 years? whether you got a family or not, I mean, of course, it'd be harder if you have a family, especially back then when there's no cell phones, there's no internet, there's no way for any sort of contact. You're in the middle of the ocean. You're not talking to nobody. Um, so of course it's going to be harder for a person with a family and a wife and children or whatever. But even a single person, you're on a boat, you're on a big ship for 2 years. That in itself I couldn't do it. Personally, I could not do that at all. At all.
Of 5 ships, only 1 remained. Of over 500 crewmen, only 23 survived.
Jeez. 23 people out of over 500. That's it. Over 500 left. They got 23 people. That's another thing, too. On top of missing your family, missing your friends, missing your home, you're on a ship, which, in my opinion, would start feeling like a prison or something, right? Then, on top of that, the only people that you have contact with, you're becoming friends with, your shipmates. You're watching them all die, and you're hoping you're not next. That has to be a terrible life.
Among them, only 9 strong enough to stand, one of which was Adams.
Wow, and it got worse. Out of 23 people, only 9 was even strong enough to really stand. So they're all sickly. Jeez. Okay, let's see where this goes.
At great cost of human lives and spirit, he had made it, and was the first Englishman to reach Japan. At the time of Adams's arrival, Japan was in a state of fragile, delicate peace. Back in 1587, Japan was unified under Toyotomi Hideyoshi. Hideyoshi began life as a lowborn, thus could not be shogun, so he became the Kwampaku, imperial regent. For a time there was stability, until Hideyoshi died in the year 1598.
I'm not sure what shogun is, but whatever position he got, I'm assuming would be the next level down from shogun. Shogun must be some sort of leader. Maybe it's the same as like a lord. I don't know.
The Kwampaku mandated that his young son be his only true heir. However, he appointed a council of the 5 most influential daimyo to rule until his son was of age. It was clear that tensions between the regents would soon escalate into war, for they did not trust one another and all desired greater power.
Yeah, so if you're leaving it up to 5 people, of course there's going to be trust issues. You got 5 people with 5 different visions for what they think the future of Japan should look like, right? They got 5 different agendas, 5 different ideologies probably, and personal incentives, right? Yeah, there's going to be some issues.
Of all 5, Tokugawa Ieyasu, Lord of Edo, was the most powerful, and he was ready to strike. Meanwhile, the Portuguese had had a presence in Japan for decades. Based in their trading port of Nagasaki, they had made a fortune as intermediaries in the silk trade between Japan and China. Among them was the Society of Jesus, also known as the Jesuits. Where Portuguese traders went, they followed, spreading the Catholic message. Portugal's crucial role in the silk trade meant that the lords of Japan were forced to tolerate this foreign religion spreading amongst its people, but with Adams's arrival, this was soon to change. William Adams and his 9 fit crew members first disembarked at a village called Bungo.
And his 9 fit crew members. Alright, let's see what they do in the village of Bungo.
They were given charity there by the local townsfolk and fed food and sake. The Lord of Bungo, a minor daimyo, soon arrived in the village, with an interpreter in tow, a Jesuit priest who was naturally dismayed to see his English and Dutch enemies on Japanese soil. The priest implored the daimyo to have Adams executed for piracy. Adams rebuked the priest, resulting in a bout of hostilities that was put down by the Japanese lord, who then had Adams detained. Soon, news spread far and wide of the arrival of strange barbarians with golden hair and blue eyes who came from the Eastern Sea. These were not the dark-haired Portuguese that they were used to. In fact, they and the Portuguese seemed to hate one another. Word inevitably reached Tokugawa Ieyasu, who immediately realized the value of these foreigners and requested that they be sent to him. Adams and his crew were escorted up the Japanese coastline into the harbor of Osaka.
So, yeah, so Portuguese have dark hair, Japanese have dark hair. You know, so the golden haired, so you got blonde hair, maybe some light brown, whatever, right? They're coming from England, Netherlands, So they probably they never seen something like this before, so they're probably freaking out. I don't know.
The Englishmen marveled at the splendor and scale of this thriving city, a metropolis that dwarfed the cities of Christendom. Upon arrival, they were kept imprisoned within Osaka Castle, for Ieyasu wanted these peculiar foreigners safe and out of the clutches of his rivals, who surely would also try to exploit them for valuable information. In May of 1600, Adams was brought before Tokugawa Ieyasu, and this meeting changed Adams' life forever. Through a Portuguese interpreter, the daimyo pressed the Englishman hard for information on the outside world. Adams taught Ieyasu of his country, as well as the wars it was embroiled in with Portugal and Spain. When asked of religion, Adams declared himself a follower of God who created heaven and earth. Here Ieyasu learned of Protestantism and realized there were Europeans hostile to the Pope in Rome, which the Jesuits had told him was the ultimate and only Christian authority. Adams met Ieyasu several more times between May and August of 1600, impressing him with his knowledge of mathematics, navigation and shipbuilding. The more the daimyo spoke to the Englishman, the more he realized that Adams may be the key to smashing the Portuguese monopoly upon Japan and getting rid of Christianity's troubling influence for good.
Okay.
2 months later, tensions between Ieyasu and his rivals came to a boil, and culminated in the Great Battle of Sekigahara, where Ieyasu destroyed his rival, Ishida Mitsunari. European sources claim that Ieyasu employed the use of the muskets and bronze cannons found aboard the Leifter to break the enemy ranks. In his victory, Ieyasu destroyed the last semblance of support for the Kwampaku-zer. The Tokugawa clan was now the sole power, and Ieyasu assumed a title that had not been used in 30 years, Shogun, a title that would pass through his descendants for 250 years. As he was now shogun of all Japan, Tokugawa Ieyasu returned his attentions to William Adams.
Shogun of all Japan. So it's definitely a high title to have, for sure.
Adams wanted to return home to England, for he had a wife and child there, but Ieyasu refused to allow him to leave Japanese shores.
He hasn't been home for over 2 years. Geez, it's going to take him another over 2 years to get home. How long has he been, there in Japan? That's crazy to be gone that long from your wife and kids.
As he was simply too valuable. The shogun needed the Englishman's loyalty, and thus gave him the status of samurai. Adams was bestowed the rank of Hatamoto, a high-prestige bannerman. He was given 2 ceremonial katanas, 80 loyal servants, and his own fief, a plot of land in the Miura Peninsula, said to encompass 100 farms.
Jeez.
Adams served.
So he just straight up made him a samurai. Like, we're gonna hook you up. We're gonna make you a samurai. We're gonna give you a bunch of land. We're gonna give you some people under you. Okay, he's getting hooked up.
The shogun well, encompass 100 fief, a plot of land in the Miura Peninsula, said to encompass 100 farms.
That's a lot of farms.
Adams served the shogun well. From 1604, he helped construct Japan's first Western-style warships, an 80-pounder and a 120-pounder vessel. The English navigator became Ieyasu's chief advisor on all things Western, and replaced the Jesuit priests as the shogun's official interpreter. To the Japanese, Adams became known as Miura Anjin, the pilot from Miura. He became an invaluable asset. Wanting to ensure that Adams would never leave, Ieyasu officially declared, "William Adams is dead. The samurai Miura Anjin is born." And so the pilot began a new life, taking a Japanese wife named Oyuki and creating a new family with her.
That's crazy. And so meanwhile, his regular wife's just at home. I wonder if he's coming back. Like, wow. Things were different back then.
In 1609, Adams negotiated on behalf of the Dutch East India Company to set up the first Dutch trading factory in Japan, helping to break the Portuguese monopoly and remove the shogun's dependence on them. Ieyasu preferred the Dutch, for they divorced religion and trade and did not try to convert the Japanese like the Portuguese did. In 1614, Ieyasu banished all Portuguese Jesuits from Japan and ordered all Catholics in his country to abandon their faith. This decision was made upon Adams's direct counsel. The Englishman had finally managed to expel his enemies from his new homeland. Adams died in the year 1620, survived by his families in England and Japan, both receiving a share of his wealth in his will. In 1633,
I mean, so at least he hooked up the wife in England or whatever, and the kid that he had out there.
the grandson of Tokugawa Ieyasu, Iemitsu, closed the borders of Japan to all foreigners. Only the Dutch were permitted to trade at the port of Dejima, largely due to Adams's earlier efforts. There is no telling what may have happened if William Adams and his crew of Dutchmen never landed on Japanese shores. It's possible that the Portuguese trade monopoly may never have been broken, and that the Catholic faith may have spread further and deeper into Japanese territory. It is possible the Tokugawa shogunate may never have closed the country. Either way, the story of William Adams has a lasting legacy in the modern era. In the West, his story was made popular by the author James Clavell, who wrote a fictionalized version of his tale in a book titled Shogun. In the East, a version of Adams is the main character in Team Ninja's AAA franchise, Neo. The brave English adventurer who landed in Japan as a fish out of water and died there as a noble lord is a tale that will endure for years to come. We have more stories to tell about Japan, so make sure you are subscribed to our...
Yeah, check out this Kings and Generals channel, guys. It seems like a good channel, actually. I'm going to go ahead and hit subscribe. I'm going to hit like on that video. They would have never went to Japan. Japan could have turned like Catholic or half Catholic. And he made it to where the Netherlands was the only country to be able to do trade with Japan. I remember vaguely hearing something about that in another video that I did a reaction to. It's been a while though. It's been over a year for sure. So it's been a while. I don't remember everything. I watched so many videos and stuff, and so it's hard to take everything in. I very thoroughly enjoyed that. That was pretty cool. I liked the animations, the drawing. I don't know if that was hand drawn or if AI had a part in it, but regardless though, shout out to Monk for the priority request. If you guys want to make your own priority request, you can find a link to that in the description section down below. And you guys have a super fun, awesome day, and I'll catch you in the next one.